the first time I saw you in person was about 10 years ago. You gave a lecture on kayak and how you build kayak, and I was not prepared for what came next, which was your personal story, your fight, your struggles with bipolar disorder that started very young. And it was a lecture that really stuck with me. It was heartbreaking in a way because your account, your testimonial was so pure and so candid. But what was really resonating with me was your energy in looking for solutions. You never stopped assessing yourself and looking for a cure, looking for the next best solution to control your bipolar disorder and to help yourself in life. Where are we standing today with the research in that department? From my memory, it was a very difficult illness to study because there's so many components that fall into it. What solutions do we have, and where are we going with treating these kinds of disorders?
I'll tell you one thing that I've been working on recently. Because I've been open, I'd say in the last 10 years about my diagnosis and my journey, about what happened to me in my 20s and 30s when I was first diagnosed, and I was unmedicated and there wasn't that much knowledge. It was sort of, when I was first diagnosed, was pre-web. So I couldn't go online and Google my symptoms. And because for the last 10 years I've been talking about it, many people reach out to me to look for advice, not me as a physician, but me as a patient and my journey. And could any learnings in my journey be helpful to other people, particularly to young people who are being diagnosed today? There's a young man who is a podcaster in New Zealand, and I was on his podcast. He talks about entrepreneurship. But on his podcast about 5 years ago, I also talked a little bit. We talked about creativity, where creativity comes from and where I get my energy, because I work on so many different projects. And I had attributed some of my energy to bipolar illness, that when you're in a hypomanic phase, it can help you quite a bit. So this young man then disclosed to me a year later that he also had been diagnosed, but he hadn't told anyone. And I found this shocking. He was about maybe 21 years old at the time he disclosed this to me. It was a couple years ago. We had lunch in Miami, and he was in the process of making a big life change at age 21, where he was going to be moving from New Zealand to Kenya. And I have a network in Kenya. I've done some work there. And so I said, I can help set you up and introduce you to people. And maybe we can create a podcast together in Africa. We can look at innovation in Africa or something. So my friend Jake moves to Nairobi, where I introduced to some people. And then a month later, he took his life. It was very difficult for me. And I thought to myself, if Jake had a community, other people who are suffering from bipolar, were able to help each other, maybe it would have been a different outcome. And so as a result of Jake's death, I created something called the Bipolar Social Club. It's an online community. There's about 500 of us right now. Everyone has a bipolar diagnosis, either bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. And it is the most loving community I've ever been a member of. It's really extraordinary. We'll have people that will email at 3 a.m. in the middle of a manic episode, and they've done something terrible, and think they've done irreparable damage to their marriage or to their work relationship. They think they're going to get fired at work. And what happens is at 3 a.m., they get a flood of emails back saying, here's my cell number, call me, I've been through this. And it's just incredible how much people can support each other when patients are connected to each other. And I have a brother who's a therapist, and he has said that we suffer in silence and there's no healing in silence. But if you have community and you can make decisions based on the lived experience of others and the compassion of others, you can find a path. And so I think we have been very successful in our small community of 500, but I'd like to see a lot more of these communities for a lot of diagnoses, not just for bipolar, but I'd like to see this for every type of mental illness, for anxiety disorders, OCD, really any type of diagnosis. It'd be good if you had a community, and that community together can support each other through their journey.
It's just to show that medicating is one angle, but probably insufficient.
Yeah, meditation, I have a meditation practice. I study at Cambridge Insight Meditation Center. It's been incredibly helpful to me for my bipolar illness, but I also have a friend right now who's going through a severe anxiety disorder, and her therapist told her, don't try meditation yet. She's not ready for it yet because she has so much anxiety. She can't sit with her thoughts because she will just cycle. It's sort of a obsessive compulsive anxiety disorder. But, for me, it's been incredibly meaningful. And also not just meditation, but the study of mindfulness has been really important to me. A lot of stress, when you think about mental illness and stress, a lot of stress comes from the world is not as we want, and it's a non-acceptance of the world because something is happening, like you lose a job, and you have so much anxiety about the loss of the job. You're not facing the world with a new reality where you just have to find another job. You're going on and on about what happened in your last job, and it can be unhealthy, this like negative rumination. And so what I've learned through mindfulness is to develop a muscle for present moment. Like for meditation, Malcolm Gladwell's a very famous author, and in one of his books he wrote about to become an expert in something, you need to practice for 10,000 hours. He later admitted he made that number up. There's no math behind it, but it stuck with me. And I thought to be an expert at meditation, you need to be distracted 10,000 times. And what I mean by this is once a newcomer to meditation sits down and sets a timer for 10 minutes and sits comfortable and closes her eyes and starts to meditate, she might realize 9 minutes in the whole time she's been thinking about a fight she had with her mom. And then she'll say, this is terrible. I can't do this. Meditation's not for me. I'm not going to do this again. Instead, what I would like her to think as a new person doing meditation is the first time she realized she's not been focusing on her breath or whatever she decides to focus on, but she's been thinking about a fight she had at work or a problem at school or a problem with her partner, she should say, whoa, I just became awake. I just became aware of my thoughts. And now I can let that thought go. I go back to my breath. Every time you go from distraction back to breath, it's like doing 10 push-ups, I would say, for your soul. And the more times, at some point when you've gone through 100 distractions back to your breath, you're becoming stronger. When you've gone to 1,000 distractions back to your breath, you're becoming much, much stronger. And you get to the point where if you're experienced at meditation, that things just don't bother you. If you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off, you have muscle memory of distraction to breath, distraction to calm. And it's helped me a lot in my journey that things just don't upset me as much. I also have learned that anger is a choice. I used to have a lot of anger, like in my 20s, and I studied Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist. And through his teachings, I learned that anger can be completely controlled and eliminated. And there's a saying in Buddhism that being angry at someone else is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. When we realize that I think of anger as creating tumors. When I'm angry at someone, I'm creating tumors in my soul, if not in my body. And therefore, why would I be angry? Why would I want to hurt myself? And when you come to this realization, you can make a decision to never get angry. And sometimes it'll flare, but you can resolve it quickly just by having this practice of calmness and practice of forgiveness. I tend to forgive people like left and right for doing something which harms me. I try to not put myself in harm's way twice, but I think these issues of being practiced at calmness, like through meditation practice, and being practiced at forgiveness and not holding on to anger, can be really transformative when it comes to mental health.
Is it some form of respect towards yourself? You're learning to respect yourself, and that will teach you how to respect others.
I like that a lot. And also to love yourself. Yeah. I work with an organization in Boston called Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and we help homeless teens. Our population is age 14 to 24. But the first thing these teens are taught when they come into Bridge, it's an incredible organization. And they do help them get their GED, the high school diploma equivalent. They help them with job training. They help them dress for an interview. They do mock interviews. they introduce to companies. They help find them housing. It's an extraordinary program. But the first thing they teach is self-respect. Because if you're living on the streets and you have, let's say, violence in your home, something that you're escaping, you can live in fear. And when you learn self-respect and you learn to love yourself, you basically don't accept harm to yourself. You don't put yourself in a situation, you don't accept a situation where you're being harmed. You try to find a better path.
That resonates, and especially for the young people at a very determining point in their lives that will decide the trajectory that they will be taking. You have developed so many tools, so many solutions. How do you bring them together? How do you make them known? How do you advertise them? How do you connect the people and the tool and connect the tools among each other?
Yeah, when you say tool, I think that I now have sold 6 companies. I'm best known for Kayak, which I sold that now 10 years ago, so it's been a while. But have created companies and sold companies in e-commerce, security, customer service, consumer travel, business travel, and podcasting in my 6 areas that I've sold companies in. But I've also created 5 nonprofits. And to me, doing a nonprofit and a for-profit, it's not that different. They're both just trying to solve problems. And so I think if someone wants to be an inventor or an entrepreneur, the first skill you need to learn is noticing problems, observing problems, and discussing them to make sure you totally get inside the mindset of the people who are having these problems. So then once you totally understand the problem, you can then just iterate, what if I try this? What if I try that? What if I try that? And I know, I'm an engineer. In the software industry, it's almost always the case the first version of the software we produce is terrible, and it doesn't really solve the problem. It doesn't solve it the right way. But by then putting your product or your service in front of people struggling with the problem, you learn what works, what doesn't work. You try again, you try again, you try again. And eventually, if you're very focused on the community who has this problem and you keep iterating, you will solve the problem. And I've been able to do this at 6 of my companies and 5 of my nonprofits. Of my nonprofits, I'd say 3 of them have scaled already to, raising. One of them raised $35 million. Another one feeds 100,000 kids a day. But they all started with just one person having a problem and then learning to fix that. And then from that, other people with this problem, can you help them as well?
If you had to think of a very acute priority right now, which one would you mention?
I'm very worried about homelessness. I'm very worried about poverty. I'm very worried about wealth disparity in this country. It's horrible that some people are benefiting from this economy and making, enormous amounts of money when other people can't afford to pay their rent or can't afford food or can't afford medicine for their family. And so I think a lot about how to help people that are, like in the worst case, who are living on the street. And most of the people living on the street also have, in addition to abject poverty, they also have an addiction issue and or a mental health issue. And I think that what I've learned is I've thought about the people living on the street as literally could be my sister or my brother. And if they had the same background and maybe had an addiction issue or mental health issue, they also could be on the street. And so first we have to figure out how to have holistic care of people that are in most need. And by doing this, you can transform lives and you can get people jobs and get them apartments that they can afford. So what I spend my time worrying about is how to get more people with wealth to spend that wealth on helping people in need. And I think if we could shift more wealth, and I'm not sure, maybe taxes should increase. I probably pay too little taxes. My tax bracket, I should probably pay more taxes. I would pay more taxes in particular if I thought it really took care of people in need. But if it's not through taxes, maybe it's through charitable. But I'd like to see more people with resources to deploy those resources, helping those without.
That's very needed at this time for so many causes. There's no shortage of causes to help among the ones you mentioned and even more. And it seems like we are always running after funding.
Yes.
How do we convince the people that hold the money to invest themselves in a cause?
I mean, in general, when you think about how to make change in society, you start with some people that make the change and you hold them up as an example and you try to have other people learn through their change. I know when I look at my business of creating software products and technology products, when we sell our products into a company, the first thing we look for is sort of lead users inside the company. Who are the 3 or 4 or 5 people? Let's say we're trying to sell software to a company of 1,000 people. Can we find 3 or 4 or 5 people of that 1,000 that learn how to use that technology and become champions for it? Well, I think social change is the same way. I think if we can find people that have power or wealth or resources or who are famous or well-known, and they show that they can redeploy their resources and do something amazing with it, maybe other people with resources will say, I want to do that too. I can do that too. For example, in Haiti, where I do a lot of work, in the remote areas, there are no water systems. No one has a faucet in their home in remote areas in Haiti. And instead, they send their kids to fetch water in the morning to streams nearby, and sometimes those streams are polluted. It doesn't actually cost that much money to put clean water into a community. When people learn that for just like $10,000 or maybe $20,000, you can bring clean water directly into a community and change the lives of hundreds of people, if not thousands of people. People with resources will say, that's a pretty good ROI. The fact that I could spend just 10 grand to 20 grand and improve daily life for 1,000 people, when they see more examples like that, I think and I hope that'll get more people to participate. You know, being able to operate in a country such as the U.S., I travel extensively, but the U.S. is where I choose to live. I love this country, but this country provides incredible opportunity for people to create companies and to create wealth. But I feel like we need to then say, we've had this opportunity to create this wealth. Now what can we do with it to give back to the people in need?
It's easier done when you confront it to the problem. It's easier done if the person with the wealth travels to Haiti and sees the issue, and that issue speaks to them, and then they want to resolve it.
Yes.
It's often the case you'll often donate towards a disease that runs in your family, a problem that you see right away and that you want to eliminate. So,
I mean, a lot of hospitals are funded in that way. It's not such a terrible thing. You'll have a child cured by pediatric cancer, and the parents might come from a very, very wealthy family, and they might build a new wing in that hospital. That's not such a bad model.
no, it isn't.
Yeah.
And it's again about bringing people together, like bringing your healthcare team together so that they can exchange and provide you with the best solutions. It's about bringing all the communities together to talk about the issues that we need to tackle.
Yeah.
And in a very connected world, it sometimes still seems problematic or slow, or where do we turn to? So that's part of the effort that I would like to see move. That is the connectors who are the catalysts of those events, identifying those priorities, putting them on the table in front of the people that care about those, and ignite that partnership towards finding solutions.
Yeah, partnership is a good word. There really does need to be a partnership.
Yes, I think so too. To wrap up, thank you so much, Paul, for being here today, for sharing. I feel like every time I listen to you, I learn something new.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best with your next endeavors, which are bringing amazing solutions to our communities.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've had fun talking with you.
Thanks.